It's time to transfer patterns to fabric, and we're starting with the upper bodice and the sleeve and the yoke. Here is the yoke. Okay, there's the yoke. I'm going to cut it out. As you can see on this yoke, I've added the quarter of an inch sewing allowance at the down part. This is to join the yoke to the upper bodice. Okay, I did it for the front yoke and the back yoke, and also I've added quarter of an inch to the neckline here for the facing, because we're going to be cutting the exact pattern for the lining as well, so that we use the lining part to do the facing. And then I added half of an inch on the shoulder for the shoulder joining, and I did it also for the back piece. Also note that for this back pattern, the neckline, we did not cut it out, so I'm going to be cutting out. I marked the neckline 1/2 inch and 1 inch, so I'm going to be cutting out the 1/2 inch on top. So we can work with 1/2 of an inch. All right. And so with this, I can also add quarter of an inch to it for joining allowance for the facing as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut out this pattern. Next, I'm going to show us how to cut out the sleeve we want. Now this sleeve is quite going to be very full, and there will be elastic at the band. And to get the fullness of this, you can also increase the length of the sleeve by 2 inches or 3 inches. So it doesn't have to be the exact length of the sleeve you are working with. So if you are working with a sleeve, say 22 inches or 23 inches, when you are transferring to fabric, which means you're going to be cutting out at least 25 or 27 inches. Now 2 inches you are adding is for ease, so that the sleeve will relax. It's not just going to stop exactly here, it's going to stay here, but it's going to have a part of it sloping down, like it's going to have a little bit of puff at this sleeve. So that 2 inches is going to give us that ease. And then you'll be needing 1 inch or 1.5 inch for hemming, where you're going to be passing through the elastic. Okay, so what we're going to be having, so instead of adding just 2 inches, I'm going to be adding 3 inches to this sleeve. So instead of 23 inches, I'm going to be marking 26 inches. All right, so I'm going to pin this mark pattern at 26 inches. Next, we're going to also consider how full you want this sleeve to be. Now I want to use the whole of this sleeve, this Ankara I have here, all of this allowance. I'm going to be using it. Now you'll be wondering how we're going to be doing that, seeing that our pattern is just the basic sleeve that is the accurate body measurement. Okay, so we're going to be transferring this pattern to a free we're going to be transferring our pattern to a free pattern paper, and then we're going to be using it to alter this. Okay, first we have to mark out the length. So this length we know we are working with is 26 inches. So I'm going to mark out the 26 inches on the pattern, on the fabric, so I can transfer this marking. Okay, so now for this sleeve, because it's going to be a very free sleeve and there's no need for this tightening that differentiates the front of the sleeve from the back of the sleeve. Okay, because for the sleeve we have the front and the back side, so there's no need to differentiate. I'm just going to be transferring only the back part. So because the sleeve is going to be free and there's no need for the tightening. Okay, so I'm only transferring the back part of the sleeve, and this is because our pattern is already folded in half, which means what we are cutting here is both sides of the sleeve at the same time. And I also folded it into 4, so I can cut the 2 sleeves at the same time. All right, so let me transfer my pattern to the new pattern. Okay, there's no need for extra marking. I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out. I am going to rule straight lines that I'm going to be using to do cut and slash. Now you can choose to do this cut and slash method, or you can just use the pattern the way it is and just mark it out. Now because we're going to also have a little pleat on the armhole and on the armhole side, so you may not need to do all this transferring pattern to fabric. You can do this part where you mark out the lines and then you cut your pattern. Now this method also, you can also use this method when you want to do a patchwork for your sleeve. Say you want to make your sleeve to have 3 different patterns. Now you want to have 3 different patterns on the sleeve. Okay, if you're trying to design your sleeve and give your sleeve 3 different patterns, after transferring your pattern to a new pattern, you can try to cut this out. By the time you cut this place open, you can replace each of these patterns with a different piece of fabric. And you also remember to add your 1/2 inch on each side, on all of the sides, for joining the pattern pieces together again. Okay, this is another method you can use to give a dramatic flair to your sleeve, and your sleeve will look more fun. Okay, all right. So in this case, you can decide to slash and spread this open. And if you are slashing and spreading this open, which means you are going to be opening it in a way that it will be completely torn apart. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the sleeve completely. So you label it 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so when you put them together, if you decide to cut it on different pattern, when you are done, you're going to be adding 1/2 inch on this side, all the way. This is just to make sure that you get if you add all this 1/2 inch everywhere, it will help you to be able to join it back so you get exactly the same pattern that you've taken out. All right, so and then for this other side, this is being the this place we're going to be, this is cut on fold, while this one you will add plus sewing allowance. Okay, you have to indicate that so that you don't forget. This place, this is where you add your sewing allowance. You are sewing with 1 inch sewing allowance or 1.5 inch. This is where you include it on this other side. All right, so let's note that. Okay, now let's transfer this to the pattern. So like I just mentioned, I intend to use the whole of this fabric, obviously, and so this place is allowed to be as free and as straight as this, because it's not going to affect the pattern in any wrong way. Okay, and so for that, you can decide that you don't want to even use an actual pattern to cut out this sleeve. You can just decide to come down here, mark like 4 inches or 3 inches. But if you want to be more accurate, divide the bust measurement by 12, and whatever you get, that's what you're going to use to divide this. So you mark the 4 inches or 3.5 inches and mark the half of the sleeve. We have 17 here, so we're thinking so by 9, so this is around this half of the sleeve. So you can just come here, make your curve to this side, and then bring it back this way. Now if you do this, this will give you the sleeve. That way you can gather this and you will still get the same thing you want at the end of the day. And if you don't want this to be as, if you don't want the top to have too much gathers, you can decide to come somewhere around here and tilt your hand all the way to this part. It will also help to give you the gather you want, and this place will not be too full. This is another method. Or you can choose to use the pattern that you've cut out into pieces. You place them like so. You're just going to space it out to accommodate whatever you are hoping to, you are trying to alter. Now if you do this, you can also get this. Okay, this is another way you can also do it. Use your pattern paper to differentiate it, just to space it out to give you more fullness. That's just the purpose of this cutting opening. This is the purpose of transferring the pattern paper and then cutting it open. Okay, so I think I'm going to be using the one I use my free hand to do. It looks finer. So like I said, if you want to use the free hand, just take the measurement of the bust divided by 12. Whatever you have, that is what you are going to be coming down on your pattern by. Okay, so now I'm just going to take out this part that we don't need. So let me cut here open, because all of this is supposed to be open. Alright, so we have the sleeve, okay, and then we have the yoke over here. Let me cut out the yoke as well. Okay, so we have, this is the path, the yoke and the sleeve is having this particular Ankara, while the upper bodice and the trouser part is going to be having the other Ankara piece. Okay, now for this yoke, I'm going to cut exactly this same pattern for the lining piece for the yoke. Okay, so I've also transferred the trouser pattern to the fabric, as you can see, and I added sewing allowance. And because I'm going to be putting the zip on the side at the back, this place I have 1 inch sewing allowance all the way to the waist, the hip line, and then I started reducing it to 0.75 seam allowance. And for the front as well, I added 0.75 seam allowance around here, and then 1 inch on all sides. As you can see, 1 inch sewing allowance on all sides. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut out the trouser pattern. Right, also note that at the down part, this I added extra 1.5 inch that I'm going to be using for the hemming. And for the hemming, I am not going to be using our hem. I'm just going to be using our hem stay hemming glue to just put it under and heat it up with our steam iron to give it a neatly finished hem. Okay, so now I'm going to cut out the upper bodice as well. And so I've also transferred the upper bodice to fabric as well, and I marked out the 1 inch sewing allowance, the same 1 inch marked for the trouser pattern, and this is it. So I'm going to just cut it out. So now half. So here is our pattern. This is the back pattern complete. This is the front pattern piece, and this is the sleeve. So we have our pattern papers complete, as you can see. Okay, so now I am going to be drafting out the part where we're going to be putting our breast pad. Okay, but then I'll go ahead to iron stay. I'm going to be ironing stay all over the top bodice. Okay, this is the complete pattern piece, the upper bodice, the yoke, the sleeve, and of course our trouser pattern. Stay, this is stay. I'm going to be ironing stay on all of the upper bodies, and I will also iron out our breast pad. This is our breast wadding, our wadding breast pad. I'm going to be ironing it on the stay on it as well. So I'm going to be showing us how you can draft out your breast pad from the pattern paper before we place it here. Okay, let us trace out the breast pad. I am going to be ironing on this Ankara piece to create a perfect bustier. I'm tracing it out, marking out the underbust, also marking the center bust, that's the bust point, and I'm also marking out where the top of the bust is. That's where I want it to stop, like half an inch away from the top. That's how half an inch away from the top. Okay, all right, so now I'm tracing it out using my marker, and I'm going to take out the pattern, and now I am covering out that tracing. Couldn't find my ruler, so I had to use my scissors as a guide. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut out this pattern piece. Also indicates where the down part of the pattern is. I had to indicate because the top and the down parts look alike, so I had to use the D to indicate that that part is the down part of the dress. Okay, so now we're going to be cutting out the piece as well, and I'm going to be ironing this. Note, I'll be ironing this on this Ankara piece after I have ironed the stay on it. Okay, so let's cut out the side parts. For the side front, I'm going to be tracing it out around, starting from the underbust as well. So I just place the underbust directly exactly at the underbust of the breast pad we are using. Then I'm tracing it out, and as well I'm also indicating where the bust point is. That's the middle part of the breast. Okay, I indicated it as well. And then from the top, I had to fold down the pattern a little because we don't want it to start exactly at the top there. I have to go in a little bit, and then from underneath, from the armhole, I have to go in by 1.5 inches. Okay, you take your tape rule and you measure 1.5 inches from the armhole to inside. When you get in by 1.5 inch, then you can use your ruler. You can use your ruler to trace it. After you connect the lines from the top, you connect it. You can use your ruler to trace it. Okay, this is how I use my ruler to trace it down to give it the shape I want. Now this is the side part of the wording, and we're going to cut it out. This is the side part of the wording we're going to be using as a breast pad. Okay,